Okay, so on June 22nd, 1941, when the Nazis invaded Russia, totally going against the Nazi Soviet non aggression pact, it was a big fooled you moment for Stalin. Stalin just was not ready for this. Remember, he just had purged his military. He knew that this was going to happen, but he just didn't think it was going to happen this fast. So in July of 41, Stalin's like, hey, allies, we're friends now. And, as much as the Allies didn't love the communists, they needed him because the enemy of your enemy is your friend, and thus the partnership ensued. So this was basically the intended plan, or the actual plan. We talked about the battle for Stalingrad, and Stalingrad's down here on the Volga. We also talked about Leningrad, uh, which is present day St. Petersburg. But you have the different sieges and the battles, which we talked about with your documents. But it was the thing that helped us the most was that Stalin did not count body bags. The United States, we count body bags. Like we care about how many of our men and women are killed in battle. Stalin didn't. Stalingrad, the civilians were not allowed to leave the city. Leningrad, I mean, a million people are going to starve to death because they're not allowed to leave and they're blockaded in. Nothing. He doesn't. He just doesn't care. But because of that, he totally drains the Nazis' resources. And while we may, we sacrifice, we make a sacrifice too. We have men and women who will die fighting this war, but we pay for it mostly in money, and Stalin will pay for it in blood. That's how we win, for sure. We can't take that away from them. So this is what Stalingrad looked like before the battle ensued. And if you remember the scenes, that opening scene we showed you, at the gate, right? Here's that circle with the fountain that Vasily is hanging out in. And this is it after. It just gets like completely destroyed. But as the battle moved forward and as the Soviets got more experience in fighting, it became more like it was more street fighting. It wasn't traditional battle fighting, and the Soviets learned how to do that, and the Nazis had to adapt to that, and that's one of the main reasons why the Soviets won the battle for Stalingrad. They didn't give up because they weren't allowed to, and they got better at the kind of fighting they were doing. Now, Hitler says to the Nazis that they're not allowed to surrender. They can never surrender, that they're going to win or die trying. Very Spartan type of approach. But the guy in charge actually surrenders. He defies Hitler's orders and surrenders. So, moving forward to December 7th, 1941, the day that, will live in infamy, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. And we know they do this because we were blockading Japan from getting certain natural resources. We had a trade embargo with Japan. We were not trading with them because we did not like their imperialist expansion that was getting closer and closer to our interests in the Pacific. So Japan bombed us. And there's a lot of interesting theories surrounding this attack, but it did occur on December 7th, which was a Sunday morning. It occurred at 7 a.m. And you have to remember, we're not really involved in the war yet. Some of our guys went over and were fighting for the RAF, but we weren't officially part of the war. So if you're stationed in Hawaii, you're in Hawaii. It's a Saturday night. There's nurses there. There's beautiful women there. It's Hawaii, so even though it's December, it's still warm and beautiful and tropical. You're going out Saturday night and you're having a grand old time. So Sunday morning at 7 a.m., you're feeling the effects of the night before. Some men were up. Some men were kind of, doing their chores or whatnot. But we got caught completely unprepared for this attack. Of course, some people argue and say that we might have known that this was happening because none of our aircraft carriers were at Pearl Harbor. They were all out to sea doing like training missions. Had our aircraft carriers been in Pearl Harbor and we had lost them, I don't think we would have been able to defeat Japan, because we needed our aircraft carriers. The way that we island hopped and liberated island after island, we needed aircraft carriers to do that. Our battleships, a lot of our battleships got destroyed. So this is a very famous picture. I want to say that's the USS Oklahoma that's exploding in the distance there, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't hold me to that. It's not the Arizona. That I do know, but I can't remember which one it is. I just always imagine, like, what was that guy thinking in that moment? You know, this is a snapshot in a crazy, crazy, chaotic moment. And I just always wonder what was going through his mind. So a few days later, December 11th, FDR declares war on Japan. And we go to war. Now, Yamamoto, who was the guy in charge of the Pearl Harbor attack, he did say that, look, we're waking a sleeping giant here. Are you sure you want to do this? Because quite honestly, we weren't involved yet. And I think he had the foresight to recognize that this was not going to end well for Japan, which of course it doesn't. This is the USS Arizona Memorial. And I'm sure you're familiar with the story of the USS Arizona. A bomb goes down and it hits the forward magazine on the ship, and the magazine is where you kept all of your weapons. So the bomb explodes where all the other bombs are. It creates a huge hole in the ship, and the sucker sinks in a half an hour. It just goes straight down. Not a half an hour. It just goes straight to the ground. It was in 30 feet of water. 30 feet of water. So it's very shallow. You can see the outline of the ship here. Oops. You see the outline of the ship here. This is like the bottom part of the ship. The rest of it was on top. They actually cut the top of the ship off. So it sinks in 30 feet of water. It sunk so fast that there's a lot of air pockets in the ship. 1,100 men went down with that ship. And you can hear for days after knocking and tinkering. You can hear the people. They were trapped inside in these air pockets, but there was no way to get them out. Because if at the time the technology didn't exist, I'm sure we have the technology now. But if you cut a hole open to get to these men, you're going to let all that water in. So they're going to drown getting in. If they cut a hole to try to get out, all that water would have rushed in. They would have drowned getting out. So I went, this is not my photo, obviously, but I went to the USS Arizona Memorial, and it was a little haunting. You still see it sunk with a full tank of gas, of oil, and there's oil droplets that still come up. You can see them, and some people fear that it's an ecological disaster waiting to happen, because that ship has been underwater now for 70 plus years, and they're just, if it collapses and all the oil then goes into the harbor there, that could do some serious damage. But I met I wish I scanned these pictures, and I'll have to show you guys in class. But when I was there, I met this man. He was there. He wrote a book on his experiences fighting the day that Pearl Harbor was attacked, and he was this sweet, sweet old man. And I bought his book, and he signed it for me. And I said, would you mind taking a picture with me? I'm a social studies teacher. I want to show my students. So I go to kind of like squat down next to him, and he's like, oh no, for you, little lady, I'm going to stand up. And he stands up and he puts his arm around me, and I put my arm around him, and he was so fragile. I wanted to squeeze him. I was afraid I was going to break him. So I'll have to find that picture and show you guys. I just saw on Google News. I'm just going to say hi.
Hi.
Say hi, class.
Hi, guys.
So that was Ayla. She came to say hi to you guys. And I completely lost my train of thought. I was talking to you about, so we're just going to move forward. Oh, the Arizona. Right. I just read on Google News that the last surviving member of the USS Arizona crew that was there in Pearl Harbor had died yesterday. So yesterday being February 7th. Elish. So now we're involved in the war, and I'm making a long story short, but D-Day, because we're in North Africa, we go into Italy, and June 6th, 1944 is D-Day. It's named Operation Overlord, and it's when we go and storm the beaches of Normandy, which is in France. A lot of times my kids get very confused by that, but I know you guys wouldn't. So this includes 2.2 million Allied soldiers, 450,000 vehicles, 4 million tons of supplies, and with that kind of, preparedness, Paris was liberated 2 months later. And when Paris gets liberated, it's a great day. So when I was in Normandy, which I highly hope you guys all get to go to, these are the bluffs that overlook the channel. So we're driving right now, and this is to the right of the car, and to the left of our car was the English Channel. And now it's a very peaceful place, right? You have these summer homes. It's quite beautiful. It's such a peaceful place. And when you stand there, though, and you think of that opening scene to Saving Private Ryan, and that's what happened here. You can kind of still feel that history. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but you really can. You can just kind of feel that to use the cliche, the echoes of the past, but it's a real feeling. So this was outside the museum. You can pay €20 to go into, which I didn't, but you still have the tank blockers that were on the beaches closer to the channel. They have around the museum, some leftover weaponry. And those pillboxes where the Germans were in, again, so on the other side of this bluff, you have the entire view of the English Channel, and they had the small openings. That's what that's where the Germans were bunkered down. That's now the bathroom, and that seems appropriate. So I did use it. It was an interesting experience. Shh, Ayla, gotta be quiet. So, I love this political cartoon for obvious reasons. So I'm hoping when you see, what is this called? Let's catch him with his panzers down. And we will if we keep them firing. That's propaganda. It was British and U.S. propaganda. So that one made me chuckle. So late August 1944, it's a much different scene. Here come the Allied troops walking down the Champs-Élysées. There's the Arc de Triomphe behind them. Everybody's so happy. Yay, we love America. The French women, so happy, very pleased to see the Allied soldiers. It was good to be an Allied soldier at that moment. You can use your imagination to imagine what happened next. So, they continued on. A lot of battles ensued. You have the Battle of the Bulge, which takes place in the Ardennes in Belgium. And, a lot of things happened between the D-Day invasion of June 44 and then on VE Day, which is May 8th. But long story short, Hitler commits suicide on April 30th. He and his new wife, Eva Braun, who they were dating for many years, but they had gotten married a few days prior to their suicide. They were bunkered down in Berlin, and they took cyanide tablets and shot themselves. And now, since their leader is dead, 7 days later, Germany surrenders, making May 8th Victory in Europe Day. And when you look at that cathedral, which is a cathedral in Rem, because that's where the Germans surrender, and this is a cathedral there, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I see a rose window, and I see flying buttresses, and I see stained glass. So immediately I'm thinking this is a Gothic cathedral, right? That's what you were thinking. I knew it. Okay, so this is the cemetery where a lot of our men were buried, a lot of U.S. soldiers. This is U.S. soil. It's in Normandy in France. It's the largest cemetery for Americans outside the United States. You can see the American flags flying there. It's a beautiful place. It's very peaceful. There is not a blade of grass that's out of place. It's in pristine condition. You can also see the English Channel off into the distance, and you have the different crosses for the Christians, stars for the Jewish men who died fighting, and some weren't recognizable. So this was their tombstone.